I'm back. Okay, this is crazy me. This is like I'm just doing whatever because I feel like it. So this is not planned. There's no script. I'm just winging it today. And I am going to be reading from a book that was written by Tolkien, the guy who wrote The Hobbit. But it was all like notes and stuff and in boxes. And so when he died, his son started going through all the boxes. His son's name is Christopher Tolkien. And so Christopher took all of these papers that were just tossed into boxes and he started putting together the stories. And so this is the history of Middle Earth. And so I am going to say hey in the chat. And here we go. The History of Middle Earth by J.R.R. Tolkien. And this is the Book of Lost Tales that, and it's volume 1. Okay. So there's 2 whole books of this. Okay. And a whole lot of other stuff. So hang on. Let me make it big enough that I can read it. The coming of Valar, or Valar. Now, this was the manner of the earth in those days, nor has it since changed, save by the labors of Valar of old. Mightiest of regions are the great lands, where men do dwell and wander now, and the lost elves sing and dance upon the hills. But beyond their westernmost limits lie the great seas, whose waves whisper about the magic isles. Further, even than this, and few are the boats of mortal men that have dared so far, are set in the shadowy seas, whereon there float the Twilight Isles. The Twilight Isles. And the Tower of Pearl rises pale upon their most western cape, but as yet it was not built, and the shadowy seas stretched dark away till their utmost shore. Uh-oh. All righty, Rudy. The Book of Lost Tales, edited by Christopher Tolkien, but written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay. I got to make it a little bit bigger. Oop, I made it smaller. Now, I'm going to... Is there anybody here? Oh, come on, everybody. Come talk with me. All right. So here we go. That was just a blurb. All right. So the first tale, because it's a book of lost tales, is The Cottage of Lost Play. So here we go. I'm not going to read the foreword today. No, I better. Oh, poo. I wanted to go to the story. The Book of Lost Tales, written between 60 and 70 years ago, was the first substantial work of imaginative literature by J.R.R. Tolkien, and the first emergence in narrative of the Valar, of the children of Ilúvatar, elves and men, of the dwarves and the orcs, and of the lands in which their history is set. Valinor, beyond the Western Ocean. So that's the land that they're from, is Valinor. And Middle Earth, the great lands between the seas of East and West. Some 57 years after my father ceased to work on the Lost Tales, the Silmarillion, profoundly transformed from its distant forerunner, was published, and 6 years have passed since then. This forward seems a suitable opportunity to remark on some aspects of both works. The Silmarillion is commonly said to be a difficult book, needing explanation and guidance on how to approach it. I have said that all along. I've tried to read the Silmarillion like 4 or 5 times. Just trying to get through the first chapter is so difficult. And in this, it is contrasted to The Lord of the Rings. In chapter 7 of his book, The Road to Middle Earth, Professor T.A. Shippey accepts that this is so. The Silmarillion could never be anything but hard to read. Page 201. And expounds his view of why it should be. A complex discussion is not treated justly when it is extracted, so pulled out of context. But in his view, the reasons are essentially 2, page 185. In the first place, there is the Silmarillion, no mediation of the kind provided by the Hobbits. So, in The Hobbit, Bilbo acts as the link between modern times and the archaic or the old school world of dwarves and dragons. So he's the connector, Bilbo, in The Hobbit. Okay. My father was himself well aware that the absence of hobbits would be felt as a lack were the Silmarillion to be published, and not only by readers with particular liking for them. In a letter written in 1956, The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, page 238, soon after the publication of The Lord of the Rings, he said, so Tolkien said this, I do not think it would have the appeal of the Lord of the Rings, no hobbits, full of mythology and elvishness and all that high style, as Chaucer may say, which has been so little to the taste of many reviewers. So a lot of people don't like Chaucer. And I don't even know if you guys know who Chaucer is. So he's saying that the way the Silmarillion is written, there are no hobbits in the Silmarillion. And so the missing piece of the hobbits being gone makes it really hard to read. In the Silmarillion, the draft is pure and unmixed, and the reader is worlds away from such mediation. Such a deliberate collision, far more than a matter of styles, as that produced in the meeting between King Theoden and Pippin and Merry in the ruins of Isengard. Farewell, my hobbits. May we meet again in my house. There you shall sit beside me and tell me all that your hearts desire, the deeds of your grandsires, as far as you can reckon them. The hobbits bowed low, so that the king of Rohan said, Pippin in an undertone, a fine old fellow, very polite. In the second place, where the Silmarillion differs from Tolkien's other works is in its refusal to accept novelistic convention. Most novels, including The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, pick a character to put in the foreground, like Frodo or Bilbo, and then tell the story as it happens to that character. The novelist, of course, is inventing the story and so retains omniscience. So he knows everything. Whoever's writing is the one who knows it all. He can explain or show what is really happening and contrast it with the limited perception of his character. So he can explain what's going on from the point of view of the character, the main character. There is then, and very evidently, a question of literary taste or literary habituation involved, and also a question of literary disappointment. The mistaken disappointment in those who wanted a second Lord of the Rings, to which Professor Shippey refers, this has even produced a sense of outrage. In one case, formulated to me in the words, "It's like the Old Testament," a dire condemnation against which clearly there can be no appeal, though this reader cannot have got very far before being overcome by the comparison. Of course, the Silmarillion was intended to move the heart and the imagination directly and without peculiar effort or the possession of unusual faculties. But its mode is inherent, and it may be doubted whether any approach, however you want to come at it, to it can greatly aid those who find it unapproachable. So, in other words, however you have to get it, go get it. There's a third consideration which Professor Shippey does not indeed advance in the same context. One quality which The Lord of the Rings has in abundance is the Beowulfian impression of depth, created just as in the old epic songs and digression, like Aragon's lay of Tinuviel, Sam Gamgee's allusions to the Silmaril and the Iron Crown, Elrond's account of the Celebrimbor, and dozens more. This, however, is a quality of The Lord of the Rings, not of the inset stories. To tell these in their own right and expect them to retain the charm they got from the larger setting would be a terrible error. An error to which Tolkien would be more sensitive than any man alive. As he wrote in a revealing letter dated the 20th of September, 1963, "I am doubtful myself about the undertaking to write the Silmarillion. Part of the attraction of The Lord of the Rings is, I think, due to the glimpses of a large history in the background. An attraction like that of viewing far off an unvisited island or seeing the towers of a distant city gleaming in a sunlit mist. To go there is to destroy the magic, unless new, unattainable vistas are again revealed." So this is from his letters, page 333. To go there is to destroy the magic. For as the revealing of new, unattainable vistas, the problem there, as Tolkien must have thought many times, was that The Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth, was already old, with a vast weight of history behind it. The Silmarillion, though, in its longer form, was bound to begin at the beginning. How could depth be created when you had nothing to reach further back into? The letter quoted here certainly shows that my father felt this, or perhaps one should say at times felt this, to be a problem, nor was it a new thought. While he was writing The Lord of the Rings in 1945, he said in a letter to me, page 110. A story must be told, or there'll be no story. Yet it is the untold stories that are most moving. I think you are moved by Celebrimbor because it conveys a sudden sense of endless, untold stories. Oh, I love this. Mountains seen far away, never to be climbed. Distant trees, like niggles, never to be approached. Or, if so, only to become near trees. I love this. I love this because what he's saying is that, you know how when a book ends and you really love the book and you're like, oh, I wish it wouldn't end. That's what he's talking about. There are stories behind the story that you're reading that have never been told. And those are the ones that you want to go find out about. The matter is perfectly illustrated for me by Gimli's song in Moria, where great names out of the ancient world appear utterly remote. The world was fair, the mountains tall, the elder days before the fall. Our mighty kings and Nargor throned, and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas had passed away. I like that, said Sam. I should like to learn it in Moria, in Khazad Dûm. But it makes the darkness seem heavier, thinking of all those lamps. By his enthusiastic, I like that, Sam not only mediates and engagingly gamifies the mighty kings of the Nargothrond and Gondolin, Durin on his carven throne, but places them at once on an even remoter distance, a magical distance that it might well seem at that moment destructive to traverse. So, I'm almost done with this forward, I think. Hang on. No, got a long way to go. Anyway, so basically, he's saying that the Silmarillion, this really is kind of a an explanation of the Silmarillion, which is, if you want to put it in Christian terms, it's like the Silmarillion is the book of Genesis. So, excuse me, it tells how Middle Earth began. And it starts with the plants and the seeds and all of that. That's how the Silmarillion begins. So it starts at the beginning, but it's hard to read. It's hard because there are a lot of characters that are part of this beginning of Middle Earth. I mean, you've got elves and you've got dwarves and you've got people and you've got orcs and you've got wolves and and wargs and ents and all of the different creatures and created things that become characters, the eagles and the wizards. And that's why I love this stuff so much. But you can get lost in it. So, there's a whole lot more here. Hang on. I'm gonna pause and say hello if anybody has joined me. Oh, people have left. They haven't joined me, but that's okay. Is anybody here? Is anybody here? If you're here, say hey. I didn't realize my screen was that far down. I have to make it bigger, I think, so that I can read it. What are y'all doing today? I really need to go get my friend because this is exactly what she and I were talking about yesterday. I probably am going to just text her and tell her. She may be working still. She's a hard working girl. And I don't know what happened to my phone. It does weird things. Does your phone do weird things? Mine does. Or it may be just because I'm old. I know you don't think I'm old, but I am old. The number of my years is old. Up here, I'm not so old. Okay, so let me go see if I can figure out if she is online somewhere. She loves the Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth, all things to do with Middle Earth. And someday I want to live in a hobbit hole. I know that sounds weird, but I do. I hope you have enjoyed The Hobbit. I really have. We only have two more chapters, and they're like the going home, the trip home chapters. Okay, she's not here, but I am going to tell her. If you get a chance, I am on my YouTube channel live. So come on over to at Yarn Spinner 54. Because I'm talking about the Silmarillion. Okay. Maybe I can find her somewhere else. Where else can I find her? Matter of fact, I think I'll just copy that and send her a real text. I was on Messenger on Facebook. Okay. Do y'all have anything to say about The Hobbit? And are you participating in the poll to see what is going on the channel from now to the end of the school year? Basically, really, from the end of April, like after Easter, and then to the end of the school year, I'm going to be reading whatever book is chosen in the poll. Okay? So, right now, Sounder is the clear winner, which I think that would be great. Sounder would be great. And y'all can hear my southern accent. And it's a real interesting book because now if you watch Sounder, if you're listening to me read Sounder, there's no names in the book of any of the people, of the characters. I think there's town names, but there's no names for like the little boy and the daddy. There's no names. The only name is Sounder, and Sounder's the dog. So the only name we know in the book is Sounders, and he's the dog. So, all right, Rudy, read it. That's my text to my friend. And she can go back and watch the recording. But let's see how much more we can get done of this. I'm going to close out this tab right here. And I'm going to close out this tab. And it's saying, you really want to leave? And I'm saying, yep, I really want to leave. Okay, so the history of Middle Earth. And I told you, wow, this is really long, this forward. And there are a lot of names in it, so I'm probably missing out on a lot of stuff. I have a cold. Actually, I have a sore throat. Probably because I've been reading so much lately. All right. Let me get to the first. I'll read you the last paragraph of the foreword. There we go. All right. Lastly, the division of this edition in two parts is entirely due to the length of the tales. The edition is conceived as a whole, and I hope that the second part will appear within a year of the first. But each part has its own index and appendix on names. The second part contains what are, in many respects, the most interesting of the tales. Tinuviel, Turambar, Turin, the fall of Gondolin, and the tale of Noglofring, the necklace of the dwarves, outlines for the tale of Arundel, and the conclusion of the work, Alewine of England. Ooh, okay. Elfwine of England. Okay, I got a response. Oh, okay. It's just an ad. All right. So now let's go to the cottage. And I think it's going to be really, really long. So I'll just read as much as I can. And my husband should be here in about 30 minutes. And that's when I'll end this live stream. But I think I kind of like this, where I just sit and talk to you and we read and all that good stuff. So here we go. The Cottage of Lost Play. On the cover of one of the now very battered high school exercise books, in which some of the lost tales were composed, my father wrote, The Cottage of Lost Play, which introduces the Book of Lost Tales. And on the cover is also written in my mother's hand her initials, EMT, and a date, February 12th, 1917. In this book, the tale was written out by my mother, and it is a very fair copy of a very rough penciled manuscript of my father's on loose sheets, which were placed inside the cover. Thus, the date of the actual composition of this tale could have been, but probably was not, earlier than the winter of 1916-17. The fair copy follows the original text precisely. Some further changes, mostly slight, other than in the matter of names, were then made to the fair copy. The text follows here in its final form. Okay, The Cottage of Lost Play. Now it happened on a certain time that a traveler from far countries, a man of great curiosity, was by desire of strange lands and the ways and dwellings of unaccustomed folk, brought in a ship as far west even as the lonely island. Ha! This looks like my name. Tolerese in the fairy speech, but which the gnomes call Dor Fedwin, the land of release, and a great tale hangs thereto. Now, one day, after much journeying, he came as the lights of evening were being kindled in many a window to the feet of a hill in a broad and woody plain. He was now near the center of this great island, and for many days had wandered its roads, stopping each night at what dwelling of folk he might chance upon, where were it hamlet or good town, about the hour of eve at the kindling of candles. Now at that time the desire of new sights is least, even in one whose heart is that of an explorer. And then even such a son of Arendelle, as was this wayfarer, turns his thoughts rather to supper and to rest and the telling of tales before the time of bed and sleep is come. Now, as he stood at the foot of the little hill, there came a faint breeze, and there a flight of rooks above his head in the clear, even light. The sun had sometimes sunk beyond the boughs of the elms that stood as far as the eye could look about the plain, and sometime had its last gold faded through the leaves and slipped across the glades to sleep beneath the roots and dream till the dawn. Now these rooks gave voice of homecoming above him, and with a swift turn came to their dwelling in the tops of some high elms at the summit of this hill. Then thought Ariel, for thus did the people of the island after call him, and its purport is one who dreams alone, but of his former names the story nowhere tells. The hour of rest is at hand, and though I know not even the name of this fair seeming town upon a little hill, here I will seek rest and lodging and go no further till the morrow, nor go even then, perchance, for the place seems fair, and its breezes of a good savor. To me, it has the air of holding many secrets of old and wonderful and beautiful things in its treasuries and noble palaces and in the hearts of those that dwell within its walls. Now, Ariel was coming from the south, and a straight road ran before him, bordered at one side with a great wall of gray stone, topped with many flowers, or in places overhung with great dark yews. Through them, as he climbed the road, he could see the first stars shine forth, even as he afterwards sang in the song which he made to that fair city. Now he was at the summit of the hill amidst its houses, and stepping as if by chance, he turned aside down a winding lane till, a little down the western slope of the hill, his eye was arrested by a tiny dwelling whose many small windows were curtained snugly, yet only so that most warm and delicious light as out of heart's content within, looked forth. Then his heart yearned for kind company, and the desire for wayfaring died in him. And impelled by a great longing, he turned aside at this cottage door and knocking, asked one who came, and opened what might be the name of this house, and who dwelt therein. And it was said to him that this was Mar Vanwa Tailieva, or the cottage of lost play. And at that name he wondered greatly. There dwelt within, 'twas said, Lindo and Vere, who had built it many years ago, and with them were no few of their folk and friends and children. And at this he wondered more than before, seeing the size of the cottage. But he that opened to him, perceiving his mind, said, Small is the dwelling, but smaller still are they that dwell here. For all who enter must be very small indeed, or of their own good wish become as very little folk, even as they stand upon the threshold. I love that. I think I'm going to highlight that, as a matter of fact. They that dwell, for all who enter must be very small indeed, or of their own good wish become as very little folk, even as they stand upon the threshold. My word. I'm sorry. I'm seeing this in a whole new light. So I'm going to highlight this. Oops. Come on, highlighter. And then I'm going to go and see if anybody's here for me to talk to. Smaller still are they that dwell here. Okay. Got to keep those notes. Those of you who are joining me, really and truly, you got to take notes, folks. You got to write in your book, unless it's a library book. But if you have the book, or if you have the ebook, highlight it. Enjoy your books. They're your friends. So many of us don't have friends. And yet, a really good book can be your best friend. Some of these books I have read many times over. So, this is good. All right. All right, so here we go. I'm going to continue reading. So you have to be small to get in this house. Okay, so my husband is going to the store, so we got some more time. Woo woo! Then said Ariel that he would dearly desire to come therein and seek of Vare and Lindo a night's guest kindliness. If so, they would, and if he might of his own good wish become small enough there upon the threshold. Then said the other, enter. And Ariel stepped in, and behold, it seemed a house of great spaciousness and very great delight. And the lord of it, Lindo, and his wife, Vaire, came forth to greet him, and his heart was more glad with him than it had yet been in all his wanderings. Albeit, since his landing in the lonely isle, his joy had been great enough. So I saw someone had joined us. So I'm going to put something here. I am reading The Cottage of Lost Play by Tolkien. Oops, I got to spell his name right. By Tolkien. It is from the book What's the name of the book? The History of Middle-earth. Thank you for joining me. Okay, so now we're going back to the book. So the man has made himself small of his own wish. That means he decided to do it on his own. They didn't push him to become small, to get into the cottage of lost play. So, here we go. And when Vaire had spoken the words of welcome, and Lindo had asked of him his name, and whence he came, and whither he might be seeking, he had named himself the stranger, and said that he came from the great lands, and that he was seeking whitherso his desire for travel led him. Then was the evening meal set out in the great hall, and Ariel, whom we now know is the stranger, Ariel bidden thereto. Now in this hall, despite the summertide, were three great fires, one at the far end and one on either side of the table. And save for their light, as Ariel entered, all was in a warm gloom. But at that moment, many folk came in bearing candles of all sizes and many shapes in sticks of strange pattern. Many were of carven wood and others of beaten metal, and these were set at hazard. That's the word that we call haphazard. At hazard, haphazard. Oh my word, I just love this stuff. About the center table and upon those at the sides. At the same moment, a great bong gong sounded far off in the house with a sweet noise, and a sound followed as of the laughter of many voices mingled with a great pattering. What are we pattering? A feet, 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 feet. Then Vaire said to Ariel, seeing his face filled with happy wonderment, "That is the voice of Tombo, the gong of the children, which stands outside the hall of play, regained, and it rings once to summon them to this hall at the times for eating and drinking, and three times to summon them to the room of the log fire for the telling of tales." And, added Lindo, "if at his ringing once there be laughter in the corridors, and a sound of feet, then do the walls shake with mirth, and stamping at the three strokes in an evening. And the sounding of the three strokes is the happiest moment of the day of the little heart, the gong warden, as he himself declares, who has known happiness enough of old. And ancient indeed is he beyond count, in spite of his merriness of soul. He sailed in Wigelot with Arundel in the last voyage, wherein they sought for Kor. It was the ringing of this gong on the shadowy seas that awoke the sleeper in the Tower of Pearl that stands far out to west in the Twilit Isles. To these words did Ariel's mind so lean, for it seemed to him that a new world and very fair was opening to him, that he heard naught else, till he was bidden by Vaire to be seated. So what do you guys think? What do you think? This is a fun story. This is the cottage of lost play. Somewhere they lost knowing how to play. And in this little house, they've learned or they've regained how to play. Tolkien, he's a genius. Okay, keep going. Then he looked up, and lo, the hall and all its benches and chairs were filled with children of every aspect, kind, and size, while sprinkled among them were folk of all manners and ages. In one thing only were all alike, that a look of great happiness, lit with a merry expectation of further mirth and joy, lay on every face. The soft light of candles, too, was upon them all. It shone on bright tresses and gleamed about dark hair, or here and there set a pale fire in locks gone gray. Even as he gazed, all arose. With one voice sang the song of the bringing in of the meats. They had a song to bring in the meat. This is so fun. Hang on just a second. All right, having to respond to people. You know how phones are. They just interrupt everything. So they had a song for bringing in the meat. Then was the food brought in and set before them, and thereafter the bearers and those that served and those that waited, hosts and hostesses, children and guests, sat down. But Lindo first blessed both food and company. As they ate, Ariel fell into speech with Lindo and his wife, telling them tales of his old days and of his adventures, especially those he had encountered upon the journey that had brought him to the lonely isle, and asking in return many things concerning the fair land, and most of all of that fair city wherein he now found himself. Lindo said to him, "Know then that today, or more like 'twas yesterday, you crossed the borders of that region that is called Alal Mimnore, or the land of the elms." That sounds like an elm, doesn't it? If an elm was going to talk, that's probably the way I would say my name. Alam Hinore, or the land of elms, which the gnomes call Garlosian, or the place of flowers. Now, this region is accounted the center of the island and its fairest realm. But above all the towns and villages of Alal Inore is held the Koromas, or as some call it, Cortirion. And this city is the one wherein you now find yourself. Cortirion, both because it stands at the heart of the island, and from the height of its mighty tower, do those that speak of it with love call it the citadel of the island, or of the world itself. More reason is there too than even great love, for all the island looks to the dwellers here for wisdom and leadership, for song and lore, and here in great Corrine of elms dwells Bouquet Meril Itrinki. Now, a corin is a great circular hedge, be it of stone or of thorn or even of trees, that encloses a green sward. That's a vocabulary word that you and I are going to have to go and look up, because I don't know what a sward is. I have an idea, but I don't know it for sure. Merrill comes from the blood of Enwe, whom the gnomes call Enwithiel, he that was king of all the Eldar when they dwelt in Kor. That was the days before hearing the lament of the world. Enwe led them forth to the lands of men. But those great and sad things, and how Eldar came to this fair and lonely island, maybe I will tell them another time. Don't you love it? But after many days, Ingil, son of Enwe, seeing this place to be very fair, rested here, and about him gathered most of the fairest and the wisest, most of the merriest and the kindest of all the Eldar. Here among those many came my father, Valwe, who went with Noldorine to find the gnomes, and the father of Vire, my wife, Tolkastor. He was of Alle's kindred, but had dwelt long with the shoreland pipers, the Solosimpi, and so came among the earliest to the island. Okay, so this guy is a descendant of one of the first people that was on this island on which the cottage of lost play is. Then Ingil builded the great tower and called the town Koromas, or the resting of the exiles of Kor. But by reason of that tower, it is mostly now called Cortirion. Now about this time they drew nigh the end of the meal. Then did Lindo fill his cup, and after him Vire, and all those in the hall. But to Ariel he said, now this which we put into our cups is limpe, the drink of the Eldar, both young and old. And drinking, our hearts keep youth and our mouths grow full of song. But this drink I may not administer. Turinki only may give it to those not of the Eldar race. And those that drink must dwell always with the Eldar of the island until such time as they fare forth to find the lost families of the kindred. Then he filled Ariel's cup, but filled it with golden wine from ancient casks of the gnomes. And then all rose and drank to the faring forth and the rekindling of the magic sun. Then sounded the gong of the children thrice, and a glad clamor arose in hall, and some swung back big oaken doors at the hall's end, at the end which had no hearth. Then many seized those candles that were set in tall wooden sticks and held them aloft, while others laughed and chattered, but all made a lane midmost of the company, down which went Lyra and Ariel, and as they passed the doors, the throng followed them. Okay, this is what I'm going to do so I can see the chat. I am going to go to YouTube on my phone so I can see who's there and we can talk. Who's here? Say hello. Come on. What do you think so far? Here I am, live. Okay. So, the history of Middle Earth, Part 2, and I am live. Let's see if I can get the chat box. Where to watch, playlist, not interested, don't recommend. Well, okay, so I must need, who knows? Who knows how I'm doing this? Uh-oh, you left. I'm sorry you left. I've been on for almost an hour. You know what? I may just go ahead and let's see how far I am from finishing. I'm on page 27 and Oh, they haven't even started telling the tales. I think I'll finish this part and then we'll pick it up later on. So, here we go. So he filled his cup with wine, and the gong of the children rang out, and the doors opened, and everybody followed the leaders. Okay, so Ariel saw now that they were in a short, broad corridor whose walls halfway up were arrased, and on those tapestries, arrased. On those tapestries were many stories pictured, whereof he knew not at that time the purport, the reason. Above the tapestries, it seemed there were paintings, but he could not see for gloom, for the candle bearers were behind, and before him the only light came from an open door, through which poured a red glow as of a big fire. That, said Fire, is the tail fire blazing in the room of logs. There does it burn all through the year, for 'tis a magic fire, and greatly aids the teller in his tale. But thither we go now. And Ariel said that seemed better to him than aught else. Then all the company came, laughing and talking into the room, whence came the great red glow. A fair room it was, as might be felt even by the fire flicker which danced upon the walls and low ceiling, while deep shadows lay in the nooks and the corners. Round the great hearth was a multitude of soft rugs and yielding cushions strewn, and a little one to one side was a deep chair with carven arms and feet. And so it was that Ariel felt at that time, and at all others whereon he entered there at the hour of tale telling, that whatso the number of the folk and children in the room felt ever just great enough, but not large, small enough, but not overthronged. So, in other words, they were just the right amount of people, just the right amount of furniture. Then all them sat down where they would, old and young, but Lindo in the deep chair, and Vire upon a cushion at his feet, and Ariel rejoicing in the red blaze, for all that it was summer, stretched nigh the hearthstone. Then said Lindo, of what shall the tales be tonight? Shall they be of the great lands, and of the dwellings of men, of the Valar and Valinor, of the west and its mysteries, of the east and its glory, of the south and its untrodden wilds, of the north and its power and strength, or of this island and its folk, or of the old days of Kor, where our folk once dwelt? For that this night we entertain a guest, a man of great and excellent travel, a son, meseems, of Earendel. Shall it be of voyaging, of beating about in a boat, of winds and the sea? And I'm going to stop there, because we need to not know the answer to this question. Okay, so I probably will not be on again live tonight, but don't forget on Wednesday night, or Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to be doing a live question and answer for Veritas Classical Schools in South Carolina. They are reading The Hiding Place. And I lived in the Netherlands for 3.5 years. And so I have offered to do a live question and answer for them so that they can ask me questions about where is Holland and what is it like? And did you wear wooden shoes? And are there windmills everywhere? And we can talk about the book and what's going on in the chapter they're reading and all of that. So that will be Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern time. I live in Central Time, but they're in the Eastern time zone. So 4 o'clock Eastern time this Wednesday, which is not tomorrow, but the day after, because this is Monday. Okay. I will be live if I can come live after supper tonight. I don't know what my husband's doing, so I'll have to find out. Maybe not. But look for me tomorrow after school about this time, which it is 4 o'clock Central Time, which is 5 o'clock Eastern Time. So about the same time tomorrow. And I'll see you guys then. Until tomorrow, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace. Hasta la vista, babies.
Hey, baby.